From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, this is Iowa Ag Matters. In today's show, Mark sits in on Senator Chuck Grassley's weekly ag conference call. I have the latest South America update with Greg McBride of Allendale, and we take a listen in to USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins' press conference on fertilizer from Washington Watch. I'm Riley Smith, one of your hosts today, and joining me now is Mark Magnuson. And Mark, fertilizer being a very important thing farmers are thinking about right now, because even if you did pre-book your fertilizer, now there are questions of if enough of that fertilizer will even make it over here. Many farmers are kind of having to make plans on okay, what will it look like if I don't get everything I paid for?
That's a very good point, Riley. And also, and of course, we're going to focus on the United States. That's where we live. That's what we focus on day to day. But there's also, we have our blinders on a little bit because there's the world issue of fertilizer. And that's something I want to talk with Jim McCormick of agmarket.net about here this morning as we discuss the grain side of the markets. What is the fertilizer situation for the rest of the world as well? Because at a certain point, if you do not have enough fertilizer that to meet the needs that we have year in and year out for growing seasons around the world, there is going to be, you would think, some kind of food issues in terms of shortages. And that is, of course, a tremendous knock-on effect from what we could be seeing right now with the Strait of Hormuz being closed and that fertilizer not being able to move as freely. It's not just the United States. It's not just North America that needs that fertilizer. It's all of the grain-growing regions of the world that are involved in this situation. And we do not want it to get to the point where we have any kind of food shortages because of the yield decrease that would come about if we don't have that fertilizer that we need to grow our crops.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about when there's such a huge production. You think of the numbers that are so huge worldwide. We've got billions in the production numbers from really each country that ships. Well, if you make even just a slight change to the yields from those numbers, you're losing billions in those yields. And like you mentioned, that's going to have a huge knock-on effect. I mean, especially just this year, at least, I think, because we're seeing those questions now. And I remember a little while ago, we were having discussions about when this fertilizer impact would hit us the hardest. Would it happen this year? Would it happen more next year? I am curious to see if it is going to be more of a this year problem. I'm not sure how much that was anticipated, but if this year is not the big problem year, like you said, and things already get worse, well, then next year, if it gets even worse from there, then we're looking at a lot of big problems. So I know, Dustin's out at Washington Watch in Washington, D.C. Secretary Brooke Rollins took the time to visit with the farm broadcasters and kind of provide some updates on what they have been doing for the fertilizer situation. And there is work being done. You can see that. And there are some waivers going to get fertilizer over here. So the question is not whether or not we will have fertilizer, just how much we'll get.
And then switching gears just a little bit, another story that popped up this week that was interesting to hear about was the shipment of soy meal from Argentina that was headed to the EU, and it was denied at the port of entry because it included some GMO grain. And we know the EU is very anti-GMO, and so it was turned away, not accepted at that port. So what's going to be the situation there now? Does that mean there's more shipments of soy meal from Argentina that would have GMO grain included? Argentina pushing back against that, saying it was a faulty test. But there's some other issues going on right now in terms of grain shipment that we need to keep an eye on.
And then, of course, the weather problems in Brazil. They're curious about that because they're going through pollination right now. Could have a knock-on impact down the road for their crops. So I think there's a lot of interesting things happening with the grain supply for this year. We'll take a look at that opening market conversation. Mark visiting with Jim McCormick of agmarket.net.
Joined today by Jim McCormick of agmarket.net. Jim, what's happening with the trade in the grains?
Hey, good morning. We are continuing to see green on the screen. We've got wheat trading another 11, 12 higher than Chicago wheat, 14 higher on the KC wheat as we speak. It is the same storyline, Mark. It is a lack of rain in the Western Plains. They just cannot buy a rain there. That wheat crop is shrinking, and that is attracting money in on the idea that crop's getting smaller. And then on top of it, you still have just the underlying story of the Strait of Hormuz being closed and a lack of fertilizer. That run up in the wheat is also pulling the corn up. East corn just got to $4.99.5 this morning, just shy of that $5 level. We are hearing some hedge pressure kick in at these price levels, so producers are trying to take advantage of these higher prices. Like I said, it is right. Corn's riding on the coattails of the wheat, as well as the crude oil market working higher, as there's still no resolution to get this straight open. Lastly, beans continue to trade 6 higher on the day, finding a little bit of support from that storyline that's been percolating the last couple of days of some meal cargoes that were rejected by the EU from Argentina due to some GMO residue that is approved in the U.S., it's approved in Asia, but it's not approved in Europe, so that is why they reject it, and that's got some people thinking that might mean more demand for U.S. meal down the line.
And I thought that was obviously a very interesting story when that popped up here this week. Is that something you think, Jim, that could have some run-on effect? Do you think that could linger for a little bit if they don't get that figured out?
I think it could. I mean, the reality is the meal supply overall is relatively tight in the world, but, it's another situation. I don't want to think, Mark, you got to get too ragingly bullish on that story, because the fact of the matter is those boats, it's not like they're going to unload them and dump them in the ocean. They're just there's going to be a cost, but they will reroute them somewhere else. They will reroute them to some other country that is willing to take that GMO trait. Now, just so you know, the Argentinians are arguing that trait is not there and it is a bad test, and they want them to try to work this out. I think the reality is this will get worked out when push comes to shove, but it's just interesting. It's another one of those storylines we're dealing with, of the supply situation where the market's just very nervous right now on this food inflationary story with that Strait of Hormuz being shut. That is attracting speculative money into the grain markets, I believe, as the world is bracing for fear that if we can't get that strait open, there is going to be a fertilizer shortage, or prices just so high that producers will refuse or can't afford to put it on, and you're going to have a yield drag, not just in the United States, but around the world, which is then going to unleash food inflation.
In rural Iowa, you need reliable information. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network brings you ag-specific content like market trends, weather outlooks, and policy updates that matter to your operation, while your local station brings you community news and consistent updates on what is happening in your area. It's a partnership built for the challenges of rural life. Your farm, your local station, and your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. Find us online at iowaagnet.com.
You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Mark and Riley with you here on the show today as Dustin continues his trip in Washington, D.C. And speaking of Washington, D.C., yesterday, United States Senator Chuck Grassley held his weekly ag conference call discussing all of the issues that affect Iowa agriculture. And one of the topics of discussion was permanent E15 legislation being included in the amendment to the House version of the Farm Bill. Senator Grassley talking about the potential of that making its way through the House and eventually to the Senate. Here's Senator Grassley with more. A recent introduction of an amendment to the House Farm Bill would permanently allow nationwide year-round sales of E15 and would help provide certainty to corn growers and fuel retailers. United States Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican from Iowa, was asked about the decision to include permanent E15 legislation in the amendment to the House Farm Bill.
It's got to be included in another piece of legislation to get through the United States Senate. I'm hopeful. The House, I think, is the most difficult. I'm hopeful because Speaker Johnson promised Feenstra that he was going to deliver E15.
Grassley further explains the reasoning behind inclusion of E15 legislation in the amendment to the House Farm Bill.
And based upon the power of the Speaker, which is much greater than the power of Senate Majority Leader, it ought to be done. And I hope that Speaker Johnson can soon deliver on that promise. And right now, all my hope has to be placed there.
Grassley says that farmer concerns and uncertainty around E15 legislation have made permanent legislation a priority.
We got to do whatever we can to get E15 done. If you would go to my meetings that I have in Iowa, and farmers bringing up E15, the 5-year farm bill, high cost of fertilizer, there's a lot of angst in the farm community about losing money on almost every crop you're raising. And it's just something that we got to do, regardless of problems that lie in the way. You got to ignore them, move ahead.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
Well, Riley, we started the show today talking about the fertilizer situation with the Strait of Hormuz and the inability to move the amount of fertilizer that we need to. And agricultural economist Gerald Mashangji said that fertilizer markets have not followed the recent decline in oil prices because vessel traffic through the Strait of Hormuz remains well below pre-conflict levels. Higher insurance costs and continued risk concerns have discouraged many ship owners from resuming normal routes. So yes, the ceasefire in effect, but we still haven't seen that traffic to the levels that we needed to yet. And that in turn leads to the fertilizer price staying where it is, hasn't moved yet. And as we've mentioned many times, it's probably not going to move down for quite some time.
You know, I think it makes sense, though, too, that those ship owners are not really comfortable moving through there yet. We have seen how quickly the situation can go from ceasefire to, oh, war's back on. Oh, there's ceasefire again. You just don't want to get caught in the middle of that. And the risk just being too big, I mean, I think that makes 100% sense.
Certainly does. It is not a safe situation right now in the Strait of Hormuz for shipping anything, so you can see why the hesitation there would persist. We'll have more Iowa Ag Matters in a moment.
Burwell Livestock Market in Burwell, Nebraska, Friday, May 1st, will be a special bred cow, heifer, and pair auction. We start at 11:30 on our regular auction. We'll be selling breeding bulls, first calf heifer pairs, cow-calf pairs, bred first calf heifers, bred cows, and bred fall cows. That's at the Burwell Livestock Market Friday, May 1st, special bred cow, heifer, and pair auction. We start at 11:30 on a regular auction. You can view our complete listings at burwelllivestock.com. You can view and bid online at DV Auction or Cattle USA, or give us a call here at the auction market, 308-346-4257.
It's time now for the Basis Report here on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Riley Smith. Taking a look at cash corn and soybean prices from across the state, with elevators trading on the May contract unless otherwise noted. ADM in Burlington on that July contract, corn 10 under at $4.67, beans 28 under at $11.65. Cargill and Eddyville on the May contract, corn 10 under at $4.56. New Cooperative in Algona on the July contract, corn 43 under at $4.34, beans 75 under at $11.18. Ag State in Sheldon on the May contract, corn 20 under at $4.46, beans 70 under at $11.07. Ag State in Alta, corn 30 under at $4.36, beans 65 under at $11.12. Cargill in Cedar Rapids, corn 7 under at $4.59, beans July contract 30 under at $11.63. 5-Star Cooperative in Nashua, corn on the May contract 26 under at $4.40, July beans 70 under at $11.23. Lincoln Way Energy in Nevada, July corn 29 under at $4.48. ADM in Des Moines, May beans 20 under at $11.57. New Cooperative in Red Oak, corn on the July contract 37 under at $4.40, beans 73 under at $11.20. Mid-Iowa Cooperative in Green Mountain, July contract, corn 53 under at $4.24, July beans 86 under at $11.07. New Cooperative in Sheraton on the July contract, corn 37 under at $4.40, beans 73 under at $11.20. Cash corn and soybean prices are subject to change without notice, so make sure to call your local elevator for the latest price movement. For Basis Matters, right here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, I'm Riley Smith reporting.
Your local radio station brings you the pulse of your community. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network adds specialized ag content to help farmers make informed decisions. From county fairs to national ag news, we're here to tell the story of agriculture to everyone who needs to hear it. Together, we deliver a blend of local community and ag industry-focused information that rural Iowa relies on every day. This message from your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Riley Smith, and we know the fertilizer situation this year is very precarious with the current conflict going on with Iran. Now, we do have a ceasefire, but we will see how that impact still weighs in on the fertilizer marketplace. USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins has more.
For years, American farmers and ranchers have faced high fertilizer prices, not least because of consolidation has led to fewer options and higher prices in the marketplace. According to USDA data, in the 1980s, we had nearly 50 U.S. nitrogen fertilizer producers. Today, 4 companies control 75% of the domestic nitrogen fertilizer market, and just 2 firms control almost all of the U.S. potash fertilizer market. American farmers need more options and more predictability going forward to keep family farms producing. Over the past several months, we have been poring over data that illustrates farmers' varying demands at different points during the spring planting season. And while the data continue to evolve, it's clear our farmers are feeling the pinch and the work must continue at rapid speed. Trump speed is what we like to call it in our administration. But I think it's important at the outset to note that this problem didn't just crop up. The Biden administration in particular did little as the price of fertilizer shot up 40% during those 4 years and hitting and one point in time, even reaching 99% higher prices. This was, of course, on top of the other challenges that had snowballed during farm country during those years, including historically low prices in the last administration, where an ag surplus was turned into a $50 billion agricultural trade deficit between the years of 2020 and 2025. But we're not passing the buck or leaving problems for others to deal with. President Trump has asked us and tasked us to take on this difficult fight. There's no question ensuring our farmers can obtain the fertilizer they need at a price they can afford is a long-term problem, but one that also demands immediate solutions both for our farmers and our consumers. That's why we are tackling this challenge head on right now as we're moving into planting season, including by collaborating in an unprecedented level across our cabinet and with our partners on the Hill. So today I asked all my colleagues at very last minute to join us so that we can together update on this problem that is facing our country and what we are going to do first in the short term and second in the long term. Long term is really where I want to focus most of today, but we also, obviously with prices where they are, want to talk about the short term. First, of course, you all know in March, President Trump suspended the Jones Act for 60 days to boost shipping flexibility and help vital resources like fertilizer flow more freely to U.S. ports. Just last week, President Trump further extended this waiver by 90 days. According to the U.S. Maritime Administration, we saw this tool used in early April for several anhydrous ammonia deliveries. So we've seen it actually in action, and we expect more fertilizer to come in under this waiver in the coming days and weeks. Number 2, we removed restrictions on fertilizer imports from Venezuela. In March, the Treasury Department waived restrictions on U.S. entities purchasing petrochemical products from Venezuela, including fertilizer, to increase domestic supply. We are working daily alongside both Treasury and State, Secretary Rubio and Secretary Besant, with companies looking to send us their urea and sulfur. One pending shipment, we believe, perhaps on its way based on current data, will fill about 57% of our April to June urea gap. Number 3, and fortunately, Administrator Zeldin, so grateful to him, but number 3 in the short term, rewriting diesel exhaust fluid rules. In March, President Trump directed our great EPA to rewrite the rules on the diesel exhaust fluid. I'll let Administrator Zeldin talk a bit about this one, but we're hearing, for example, the Dakota Gasification Company has deliberately prioritized higher urea production while reducing DEF output in wake of this recent news. Again, real world answers to some of the policy solutions that we're putting out. Number 4, critical minerals. This work dates back to spring of 2025 as well, when President Trump reinstated potash as a mineral critical to national and economic security. This underscores our belief that the availability of affordable fertilizers is essential for U.S. food and farm security, which means, of course, national security. And our great Secretary Burgum will speak a little to that. Next, antitrust enforcement. In September of last year, just a few months ago, we signed at USDA alongside the Department of Justice an MOU to strengthen competition and harness agricultural input costs, including fertilizers. While Attorney General Blanche is not here today, we continue to have that discussion, and the DOJ is taking that very, very seriously. And the private sector is stepping up. Just last week, I had several of the CEOs from major fertilizer companies in the office here at USDA. Several of our cabinet members were there as well. A great American company, CF Industries, listened to farmers and to the administration and has delayed their scheduled maintenance on their ammonia plant in Donaldsonville, Louisiana, supplying an additional 100,000 tons of granular urea to U.S. customers that otherwise would not have been available this planting season. Another example, Pivot Bio is also allowing customers to lock in their prices through the 2028 season. Our administration continues to push others in the private sector to make similar commitments to our farmers. Strengthening the domestic supply is crucial, but we're not stopping there. The Department of Treasury recently announced they're taking action at the G20 this April in his capacity as chair of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors. Secretary Bessent issued a chair's statement calling on countries to refrain from imposing export prohibitions or restrictions on fertilizer. And we look forward to our friends and allies stepping up to the plate. Here at USDA, we're currently harnessing ag precision technology alternatives to fertilizer on a scale never before seen in the history of our country. Last month, USDA, Senator Hoeven, launched the National Proving Grounds Network for Ag Tech to test and validate emerging and existing precision agricultural technology that reduces reliance on fertilizer imports. These new technologies hold the potential to radically improve the situation, and the best minds in America are already working hard to make that happen.
We will have more from USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins discussing the fertilizer situation at that press conference. We will have that for you tomorrow on Iowa Ag Matters. More Iowa Ag Matters in a moment.
In rural Iowa, you need reliable information. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network brings you ag-specific content like market trends, weather outlooks, and policy updates that matter to your operation, while your local station brings you community news and consistent updates on what is happening in your area. It's a partnership built for the challenges of rural life. Your farm, your local station, and your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. Find us online at iowaagnet.com.
This is the Midday Market Update on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson.
Joined at midday by Jason Meyer of agmarket.net. Jason, what's happening with the trade in the grains here at midday?
The grains are once again seeing some nice green in the marketplace. So the trend, especially on corn for being up the last couple of days, continues. I believe our new crop corn has been up for 8 days in a row, and we're working on day 9 now. So I hope I don't jinx that trend here. But we're seeing some strength continuing to stem from the rally in crude oil. Crude oil is up pretty good again today, up over $5 a barrel. This is the highest level we've been at since April 13th. Just some concerns that the Strait of Hormuz is not open, and now it seems like President Trump is not in a hurry to open that anytime soon. He just wants to completely destroy the Iran economy so that they'll actually come to the table. And then you could argue we got continued strength in wheat, especially the Kansas City market. Kansas City wheat actually made 2-year highs yesterday. And then kind of coming back to the corn market, these 26 futures were at the highest level we've been at since January of 2024.
What's happening on the livestock side of the trade?
Cattle, again, made a new contract high today on the fat cattle. Feeder cattle haven't quite been able to make new contract ties, but we're continuing to see a lot of strength. Cattle, we saw some good cash trade yesterday, up 4 to 6, and then some locales maybe a little bit stronger than that. We saw that the Florida Ag Commissioner is not going to allow cattle to come in from South Texas. So there's maybe some ideas that the border with Mexico is not going to be opened anytime soon. So that's given us a little bit of strength. And then the hog market is finally starting to catch a bid. They're well off their highs, but at least there's some green on the board here today.
What's the best way for our listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
The best way would be to go to our website, agmarket.net, and click on a link for a free trial.
Jason Meyer, agmarket.net. Thanks so much for the time and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Mark. Have a good day as well.
Start your trading day the right way with Market Matters, the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network's first look at the grain markets. Every morning, we bring you the numbers from the overnight session, plus a quick snapshot of the macroeconomy and what's driving market moves. Need to know what's coming next? Market Matters gives you a daily preview of market-moving news and reports so you're ready for the trading day ahead. And don't miss our daily livestock market outlook. Get the analyst predictions before the markets open. Get the edge you need. Tune into Market Matters every weekday morning, only on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
May corn is unchanged at $4.65 and a quarter. May soybeans up 6 cents at $11.79. May soybean meal down $6 at $3.2740. May soybean oil up 87 cents at $74.25. On the Merc, June live cattle up 73 cents at $254.23. May feeder cattle down $1.03 at $370.70. May lean hogs up 73 cents at $94.88. May pork cutout unchanged at $108.78. Class 3 milk down 30 cents at $17.41.
That was a check of the midday markets on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson.
You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith on the show today, filling in for Dustin Huffman and Mark Magnuson, now rejoining the market conversation with Jim McCormick of agmarket.net to discuss what's going on in the cattle and hogs.
What's happening on the livestock side of the markets?
Well, you look at the cattle market, it continues its march higher today as it continues to rally up. Supplies are very tight. Cash market moved strong yesterday, and it's the same old situation right now. We've got a very, very tight situation on the supply side. There is no grass in the West. And right now, the market is trying to see how far they can willing to push that consumer to buy. And, you know, what the bulls are counting on is we're moving into that spring grilling season. We're a few weeks out from Mother's Day weekend. Then, of course, you've got Memorial Day weekend, Father's Day weekend, of course, the big 250th anniversary of the United States. So the viewpoint of the demand side of the equation is, as we go into it, high prices be danged. Americans love their beef, and they're going to buy it. The market looks like it's going to see how much that consumer is really willing to pay for it. But right now, we're pushing the highs.
What's happening on the hog side right now?
On the hog side of the market right now, we saw a little bit of correction last week. You know, now we're trying to rally. We're up a little over $1 today at this point in time. So, you know, we're trying to catch on this 10-day moving average on the August hogs this morning. On the June hogs, we managed to get over the 50-day or 20-day moving average, pulled back on it. So technically, the hog market, it's kind of riding a little bit of the coattails of the cattle market, I got to believe.
Jim, what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
You can reach me directly at 815-665-0461. Reach any of the Ag Market team members at 844-424-6758.
Jim McCormick, agmarket.net, my guest here today. Thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks for having me on.
Stay up to date with the latest in the ag industry with Agribusiness Matters from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Each weekday, we bring you the latest advancements in farming, from new precision ag technology to cutting-edge sustainable farming practices. Agribusiness Matters is also your source for the most relevant ag news, policy discussions, and insights that are shaping the future of agriculture. Tune in to Agribusiness Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
In rural Iowa, you need reliable information. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network brings you ag-specific content like market trends, weather outlooks, and policy updates that matter to your operation, while your local station brings you community news and consistent updates on what is happening in your area. It's a partnership built for the challenges of rural life. Your farm, your local station, and your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. Find us online at iowaagnet.com.
You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and it is time now for the South America weather and crop update. Greg McBride of Allendale joins Riley Smith for this week's update.
On the phone right now with Greg McBride of Allendale as we take a look at the conditions down in South America for another week. And first off, Greg, what are we seeing in the latest weather patterns for Brazil and Argentina?
Well, we continue to see the Brazilians drying out. We've been talking about this now for a couple of weeks. Is that last week they got an average of 0.4 of an inch of rain, and that is below what they need. And we're starting to see some concerns. They are at a crucial time on the second crop corn that they would really want to see some additional rains here. Southern Brazil getting plenty in the 1 to 5 day and 6 to 10 day forecast, but the big portion of Brazil still on the drier side. Argentina also on the drier side, but that's not quite as much of a worry as they're in active harvest right now.
And when we think about the conditions down in Brazil right now, they're in that pollination period, and this is a critical time for that crop.
Yeah, absolutely. This is when they would appreciate some lower temperatures and see some active rains here and there. But just anywhere near an inch per week would be just fine. They've been getting about half of the expected rains or less, pretty steadily for the last 3 to 4 weeks.
And then when we look at the crop progress in Argentina, how are they looking right now?
We finally have a soybean harvest progress. So at this point, they are 10% complete. They are behind the 5-year average, behind the 3-year average, which 5-year average puts them at 26%. 3-year average puts them at 19%. So 10%, just slowly getting into it, but we'll see if they can play some catch up with some of the drier conditions that are coming out over the next 10 days here. Corn harvest still moving right along ahead of the 5-year average, ahead of last year as well. 5-year average comes in at 26, so they're moving fine on the corn. It's just a slow start for that soybean crop.
And I know there had been rumblings a while ago about the crop conditions in particularly Brazil, and if that would have an impact on the yield numbers that we see down there and the exports, but as of right now, we haven't really seen anything to substantiate that, right?
No, I would imagine as we get to the next WASDE report, CONAB will report similarly very soon after that, or right around the same time. We'll start to look at maybe shaving a little bit off of that corn crop. We're talking about a record corn crop, especially that second crop corn, which is 75% of the overall production. So if they were to cut, say 2.5%, we're talking about maybe 3.5 million tons off of that crop. That would at least be probably a good start. I don't know how much damage or how much to really say, because they are in active pollination. It could be something that if the rain switches on tomorrow and the current forecast is a little bit changes a little bit, that would help them out. So you can't make too big of a cut right away, but it is something that we would have to watch for, maybe on this WASDE report or the next one coming up.
All right, Greg, lots of great information today. For anybody who would like to get in touch for more marketing information, how can they do that?
Give us a call at 800-2-MARKET. That's 800-262-7538.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
In rural Iowa, you need reliable information. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network brings you ag-specific content like market trends, weather outlooks, and policy updates that matter to your operation, while your local station brings you community news and consistent updates on what is happening in your area. It's a partnership built for the challenges of rural life. Your farm, your local station, and your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. Find us online at iowaagnet.com.
Stay up to date with the latest in the ag industry with Agribusiness Matters from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Each weekday, we bring you the latest advancements in farming, from new precision ag technology to cutting-edge sustainable farming practices. Agribusiness Matters is also your source for the most relevant ag news, policy discussions, and insights that are shaping the future of agriculture. Tune in to Agribusiness Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
And that wraps up another episode of Iowa Ag Matters. Thanks again for tuning in. On behalf of Mark Magnuson and Dustin Huffman, I'm Riley Smith, and we'll see you tomorrow on Iowa Ag Matters.